Hello, everyone. I'm Kristi Faltorusso. Thank you so much for joining the Success Coaching Monthly CS Mastermind webcast, where we bring together professionals from across the customer experience ecosystem, from customer success managers to support specialists and everyone in between. Today's session is brought to you by Success Coaching, where they have helped customer-facing professionals from almost 100 countries developing the skills that they need to excel. Whether you're in customer success, support, or any customer-facing role, you can find the right program for your learning style. You can find all the details of their offering on their website, successcoaching.co, or in the chat. Ashley is going to go drop any links for you there, along with any coupon codes that they might be offering. The CS Mastermind is about real world experience. So no theory frameworks here. We're going to talk about real practical advice and actionable insights that you can apply immediately to your role. So today's topic, we're going to talk about how to explore personalization of our customer experience at scale using AI. To get us started, I'm going to walk you through a few housekeeping updates, and then we'll dive in and do some introductions. So before we begin, please note we are recording this session. We'll share the replay next week, so be patient. That will be in your inbox. Please use the Q&A buttons for any questions that you have. So please don't drop them in the chat. Use the Q&A functionality in the Zoom window, drop your questions there, and feel free to upvote. We're going to sort it by upvoting. So at the end of our session today, those will be the ones that will get priority over any others in the discussion. LinkedIn Live viewers, if you have any questions for us, post them directly into the comments. We'll make sure those are passed over. So don't worry about that. I am super excited for today's conversation and to introduce my friends and our panelists who are going to be sharing their insights with us today. So we're going to get started alphabetical order as usual. So Rebecca, that means we're going to start with you.
Thanks, Kristi. I'm Rebecca Nerad, the Vice President of Customer Success at Advantive. I've been in customer success, as I like to say, well before we had the term customer success for 25 years now. While I've had leadership roles in support and marketing, most of my focus has been CS, driving value for our customers, and most of that time owning the renewal function. I've been in the supply chain and operations software industry for my entire career, and the last 10 years have had a particular focus around mergers and acquisitions. So acquiring companies who in many cases don't have a customer success function, and so bringing some of our best practices to the processes and to the people at those organizations to help them scale.
Very good. Rob?
Yeah, my turn next. I'm Rob Zambito. I'm the founder and CEO of Success Scaled Consulting. And what we do is we build and scale customer success teams. I mean, we color it with different terminology depending on who you are, between like helping customer success teams be more proactive and revenue generating rather than reactive cost centers, or driving NRR and improving margins or whatever. But regardless, what we do is we build and scale customer success teams. So I trust that everybody here in the room knows what that means. So we've done it about 40 times now across 40 or so clients, rather. From first dollar to unicorn. We have a core 6 to 9 month program that we run folks through. We also have recently spun off system scaled. So that's like our RevOps focus or CS Ops focus of the business. And then talent scaled, where we're happy to help people find jobs. So it's been really fun. I've been in customer success for like 10 years, depending on where you draw the start line, 11 years maybe. But it wasn't always this pretty. I got my start, Kristi knows this, living in the basement of my first customer's house. And people are out here on LinkedIn talking about being customer centric. I was like, I couldn't be farther away from my customer. I literally lived in his house. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Rob. Somer.
Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Somer Morton. Unlike my beautiful peers here, I'm newer into customer success, and so had a varied career, but I started my CS journey nearly 2 years ago. Met a dude in the driveway of my wife's parents, and he was like, hey, your sort of unique sort of skill set from sales operations. I helped launch Tesla into Australia, and I've helped build an entire leasing portfolio for a boutique investment bank and sort of productize it. So there's a lot of B2B stuff from in there. And he was like, you'd be great at a customer success manager role. And I was like, oh, weird. So I kind of dipped my foot in, dove in, and I've just been kind of sprinting to keep up. And I now spend my days, and I work at HighSpot, I spend my days working with enablement teams and sales leaders, helping to integrate AI into individual contributors' roles so that these companies can keep growing or sometimes stop shrinking. And so I'm really excited to lend like a bit of a different perspective, very much from like a hands-on, what do we actually go do? Whereas Rob and Rebecca are thinking about things from the top down about what's possible. So yeah, super excited.
I love that. We got 3 strong voices for today's conversation. So that said, I'm going to get us started and tee us up for this discussion today. So let's get started with the simple truth. Customers today expect to feel known. I don't think that that's different, though. I feel like they've always wanted to be known. But they expect you to understand their goals, anticipate the challenges, and reach out with relevance, not just generic check-ins or template updates. At the same time, you've got CSM portfolios that are growing, resources are tight. The expectation to do more with less has never been higher. So here's the tension. How do you make every customer feel like your only customer when you're managing hundreds? So this is where AI enters the conversation, not as a replacement for relationships, but as a force multiplier for them. So when used thoughtfully, AI can help surface insights, trigger timely outreach, and tailor messaging in ways that would be impossible to do manually at scale. But the real opportunity isn't automation alone, it's augmentation. It's using technology to free up time and sharpen focus so that human moments matter even more. So today we're exploring how customer success organizations can blend efficiency with empathy and how they can deliver personalized experiences across the entire book of business without losing the authenticity that builds trust. So to get us kicked off, we're going to start. What does personalization at scale mean in modern customer success, and how does AI make that possible? So Rebecca, why don't you get us started today?
To me, personalization at scale means you have to deliver contextually relevant value. So you can't have a human interaction for every customer in the way that they want. And we have tons of data and insights. And what AI helps us do is gather all of that to help each individual customer feel understood, even though we're using the digital first model. So if we focus on roles and segments, and we'll get into some of that, but we're leveraging the AI to inform us about this particular, maybe it's a customer segment, maybe it's the product that they're using. Ideally, it's down to the customer level. But we can certainly seem more mature about the industry or what's been going on with that customer if we leverage the data right to make them feel heard in a way that they hadn't been before.
I love that. All right, Somer, I'm gonna direct this next one to you. I want to hear your thoughts on this because you're coming at it from a different perspective. So when you think about personalization at scale in modern customer success, how does AI make that possible?
Absolutely. So while my leadership is thinking about what Rebecca's saying right now, I'm thinking about across my book and my time that I have available, how am I able to connect with my customers and the way that our customers work. We have 4 different personas, 3 different power levels. So there's a huge number of different categories of relevant information that I need to approach within one organization. And so the 2 sort of key pieces here are in the past, and Rob and I have sparred on this. I did think that personalization existed at odds with scale, that the more personal something got, the more time it took to make it personal, and therefore the less scalable it was. Now we're able to outsource, or I'm able to outsource a lot of the like reading of notes or reviewing call transcripts or anything like that, the information gathering processes, and I can go into a call with much less prep, and I can have a very targeted, specific conversation without needing to re-dive into discovery. And that allows me to be personal and relevant and timely to each of my customers across my book.
I love that. Now, obviously, Rob, you've got a company where it's scaled as in your name.
Yeah.
So when you think about personalization at scale, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm always just trying to, teach myself the lessons that I teach my clients and put it into practice and dog food my own advice. But yeah, so it's interesting too, because like as a consultant, my job is not that different from that of a CSM, right? In fact, the best CSMs are those who are consultative and they treat their clients, they provide their clients advice and value add guidance that is very similar to consulting. So the interesting thing is and what we've even been dogfooding with me and my team is like, since I was in college, I remember I had a marketing professor who said, keep trying to solve for an N of one. Try to solve for the individual persona as specific as you can. And I remember rolling my eyes thinking like, yeah, this guy is like a prolific marketing professor, but really like that's not possible with a scaled business. And so now I felt like fundamentally unlocked in many ways because large language models do allow me to understand my clients, even just refreshing myself, like Summer was saying before calls, with a lot of the depth of understanding that client deserves. So like in the past, personalization at scale meant like, oh great, you like have a digital marketing campaign or a digital CS campaign with like merge tags that I know we've all gotten like the hello first name, like those merge tags that didn't
The
get
standard marketing tokens, like the
yeah.
inserts. Yes.
Yeah. And then like that's that's where I cut my teeth in this original domain. But I just like stayed fascinated with this problem of like trying to solve for an N of one. And then only now do I actually find that there's tooling that allows me to provide the right outreach with the right messaging to the right persona with the right timing, all of which I've been really bad at in the past. And so that was the interesting, like Summer said, we sparred about this. I think the interesting thing is that to me now, like personalization and scale, like they're more orthogonal now. They're sort of at a right angle to each other instead of on a spectrum where you have to inherently go one way or the other. And there's this interesting new quadrant of like personalization and scale that like I'm super fascinated with.
Very good. Okay, well listen, I'm sure like many of you, we're seeing like an explosion of technology in support of this, right? I feel like every time I log into anything, there's a new tool being marketed to me to go solve some of the problem that I don't even know yet that I have. So I'd be curious to hear from you guys, what does the tech stack look like that is enabling and empowering you all to think about personalization at scale?
I got the smallest one, so I'll go first. Um, my company is like an AI first company. So my product, we dog food, like it's baked into my workflow. But we have a meeting intelligence, so it's recording all of my calls, ingesting all of my emails to create like an account timeline so I can query that via an agent. It allows me to go in and extract like sentiment analysis, business objectives, everything you might want. So I ask it a question. Um, so the TieSpot, but Gong has a very similar thing, and there's a whole bunch of like spin-off AI first companies. Then we have like an LLM. We use Gemini, but ChatGPT, whatever, doesn't work. I have a Gem, which is like what are the ones they call a GPT on ChatGPT. It's referencing like customer success best practices as the context of my role and the context of my company. And then I have like a pre-created prompt, and I'm able to jump in there and sort of spar with it, where I will bring my thoughts on what's happening, and I might drop like a transcript in, and I can extract a success plan out of it. Um, so yeah, they're the two biggest pieces. I know there's heaps that is potential and capable, and my colleagues will jump into it. I have a lot of security guardrails I cannot go around. And so for some of you that are ICs on the call, one of your objections might be, I can't because it's not my decision. And so the question then becomes, well, what can I do that is within my control that could save me 15 minutes times 10? Like, where can I shave off sort of little pieces of my my workflow? And just yesterday, I literally was feeling frustrated about writing a follow-up email, and I noticed that Gemini has an agent within my Gmail. So I went in there, I was just like, write me a follow-up email to each individual member of this. It was like after a business review, singling out their action items, and then politely get follow-up. And then I did it, and it was great. And I sent out all of those emails, like I adjusted them a little bit, and I saved myself like probably 20 minutes. So
I think we forget that it's okay to be better, not best, right? Incremental improvements and around efficiency is still better than where we were. So better, not best is absolutely fine. And so, Summer, I think you gave some really great use cases there. And if I'm being honest, I don't think people think enough about security. So good on your company for really putting some guardrails around that, because it's getting crazy out there. All right, Rob, what's in your tech stack?
I just wanted to mention, Summer, I love that you mentioned like sparring with your AI, because Kristi was on a really good panel last month that I got to see, which was about how to use AI as, Kristi, what was the word? A provocateur, I think was
Yes.
what the word that went around. I think that's so important because like AI can be your best friend to sharpen your thinking, and it can be also your best friend where it's like a total yes person, and it's like you're absolutely right about anything you say. For me, I'll mention one that you just made me think about, Summer, but the main ones that I'm using day to day is I think about the different touch points of the customer journey. I don't think about it like what are the tools. I think about the journey points that I'm touching, and there's 7. So it's support, it's onboarding, it's customer health, it's renewals, it's churn handling, it's upsell, and it's customer advocacy. And if you didn't follow all that, it's okay. I'm sure I can make a LinkedIn post or something out of it. But regardless, we're all doing these things every day. Some of us have a narrower scope within that. But when I look across those, I think some of the more interesting, the key ones that I really like to think about are when I think about churn handling, that's a really big one where I've leveraged AI for objection handling exercises so that the first time I have a conversation with a customer, it's not the first time, right? Because I've trained a custom GPT on that customer, that interaction, that problem set that I'm trying to solve, and what the exit criteria are from that churn or cancellation moment. There's really interesting new tooling coming out around customer health as well. Like I use a meeting recorder called Spiky. That's my total favorite because I'm like my academic background is in behavioral science, and Spiky is all about deep sentiment analysis. So I could look at like 5 clients and find the 5 points last week where clients showed signs of anger or showed signs of excitement. And that's like an unheard of thing for me, in prior lives when I've managed teams. So there's some really interesting ways to use that to feed health scoring. Although sentiment, I think we all know in this virtual room that like sentiment and health scores and forecasting, they're all different but related concepts. And then the last thing I was just going to mention is there's a cool tool on the onboarding front that I've just been checking out, brand new, called Quarter Zip, that like does in-app it does like in-app guidance, so that like if you're struggling as a user to set up something in the admin screen, instead of like having to have an LMS on your separate screen that teaches you how to use the admin screen, and I love LMSs, don't get me wrong, but like there can be real-time contextual evidence of like, okay, you seem to be struggling here. How can we help you overcome this integration challenge, this configuration challenge, or whatever, even just like a usability challenge? So there's a lot of really cool ones that I've been checking out.
Rebecca, what do you got? What's in your tech stack?
It's going to lean right into some of what Rob shared. First, I'm very fortunate to be at an AI forward company, not just in our products, but in the way that we lead and encourage across the board. So everyone has access to ChatGPT, and because it's in our firewall and our data, like we are able to send customer specific examples where many people can't, right? So, I mean, step number 1, you have to use your customer data responsibly within, the expected boundaries, as Summer was saying. You can't just send out examples, whereas like the idea of being able to say, here are 2 contracts, what's the difference between the SLAs here? That's guidance that it really depends on the specifics of your tools. And in my case, I feel like my team's able to do a lot of that type of research. I want to give one example though, where we use AI, and this was a chat GPT again, but it's so related to what Rob said, that, I built an agent about objection handling, and imagine sending the transcripts for the past year of all of our renewal desk, right? Where I'm giving approval, we have guardrails, the team comes because a customer wants an exception. We talk about pricing, bundling, all these rule sets, and, with real examples. So now we have an agent where the CSM can go and ask for those questions. Like, these are the things the customer's asking for. And so when they're coming, asking for a recommendation, if it breaks a guardrail, they're already getting guidance. And what this provides them is both the internal coaching on what rules and what they recommend, what I've approved in the past, as well as here's a customer facing email to represent how you respond to some of these points. So that's just one of many examples that we have for tools, again, around more internal rules. As far as one other call out from a tech stack perspective, I want to give a shout out to Glyphic. So all of our calls are recorded. This is sales and CS are recorded using Glyphic, and it's also good. Rob was talking about sentiment analysis. And so this captures especially for the individuals, but also for the managers, right? When I'm able to go back and see across a set of customers or trends, there are a lot of insights that are gathered from this. And where it makes a difference in a CSM's life is that they're able to send it off and make use of it, right? So it says, summarize, oh, I have a QBR coming up. It summarizes the most important points from the prior one, or even who's the point of contact, right? I'm a new CSM assigned to this customer. It's able to say, oh, this is the person who'll handle your invoices, and this is the primary point of contact based on a bunch of information that we would normally have to go and chase. And what's great is at the end, it'll recommend in this sentiment example to say, wow, that customer, they were just talking about canceling, or they were really frustrated, like something bad came out of that. It'll say, should we change the sentiment value, right? Back in your health, in your CRM, in our case of Salesforce, right? Should we change this? And all you do is go, yeah, like push. So it takes the notes, because it's integrated to Salesforce on like what we've mapped for our fields, makes a recommendation, and we just go, yep, this and this and this, I want to update, go. So if you think about the amount of time it saves, from a note taking and going and entering into the system, gathering information before you're meeting with a customer, that really saves a lot of time.
I love that. You know what's interesting? I didn't hear anybody talk about Claude.
I'm actually about to break up with ChatGPT.
Right, same. So I just cleared off one of my computers just to have it ready to do co-work on it. So that way, from a security standpoint, I don't have anything on there. So no files or anything I don't want it to access. So I have a clean computer all ready for co-work. But I was surprised. Like, I feel like Claude, they did make this huge investment in their Super Bowl commercial. So I figured everyone would be using it and talking about it now. So
I think if I break up with ChatGPT, it will be like, you're absolutely right. You should break up.
I heard Claude's a little saucy though, so I don't know, for my self-esteem, I might not be able to handle it. We'll see how
That's
it goes.
what I want.
I like the question. I didn't. I'm on the cusp, Kristi. Like I'm actually at a place where, like, yeah, before I lean in any further, from a like more, personal and some of the other, I think I'm going to start Claude.
Okay, so we might all just have to come back and do a Claude workshop together where we talk about all the cool things we were able to do with it once we've done it. I saw somebody in the chat mention Gamma. I'm a Gamma junkie for like quick deck building and making all that stuff. And it's really cool what you can integrate that with. And so when you talk about personalization, if the workflow that you're required to execute on does require presentations, please go look at Gamma. Not sponsored, but like love that.
I've heard the same from a leader in AI, and I have a leadership roundtable around that, and that was like one of the outputs.
I'm like, Gamma doesn't charge me enough per month for the amount I create in it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, I know that we probably all could rattle off hundreds of tools because every day there's 100 new tools coming to market. So hopefully that was interesting for you guys. You jotted down a bunch of new tools. Hopefully there was something new that you can go and explore after this. Let's keep the conversation going here. So for you guys, how can CSMs ensure AI-driven automation still feels human, empathetic, and relationship-centered? Because I feel like there is fear about that, right? Like personalization can still feel generic, even though it's personalized. So how do we keep it authentic and actually feel inspired by humans?
I'll be happy to
Somer,
dive
go.
in.
Rob, somebody.
I'm happy to dive in. So there's three lenses that I try to always look through. The persona, the message, and the timing. Those are the most important. There are a lot of other ancillary lenses to look through, like like we mentioned security before and things like that. Now, like there's a lot of other things to be thinking about, but the three most important things in my mind are, do I have the right persona? Is this the right message? And is this the right timing? The really cool thing that I've started to see is like a lot of activity now around the third part of that, timing was like the hardest thing. If you think about it, like a lot of times, the old fashioned model is like you wait for a QBR to like talk about new features, new value, new expansion opportunities or whatever. But now it's like that type of thing can be real time triggered. There can be agentic messaging that enters a customer into an expansion cycle. And, I, as the operator of that system, my job becomes so much more timely and so much more precise that, I don't have to wait a month, 2 months, 3 months for that conversation to be had. So that's been pretty cool.
Rob, I got to challenge your three,
Sure.
and I'm gonna. Can I put a fourth in there? You don't have to keep
please.
it, but I'm gonna put it in. But you don't have to keep it. You didn't mention data because I feel like the
Mhm.
context would also be a critical element of that. So, like, I absolutely love that, like the persona, the message, the trigger, and the timing. I love that, but I feel like those can only be true if, right? They can only be effective if the context that we are pulling from is good to make it feel human. And I don't mean generic data like your renewal date, your company name, which I feel like is fine. It's like seemingly where everyone's starting, but like the rich context, the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Somer, Rebecca, help me out.
For me,
I was just you go, Rebecca.
well, for me, it's about automation and I are handling like what's predictable and all the data and all of that, right? But humans still need to handle the complexity and the emotion and the value, right? And I think we fail most when we try to just automate and send and don't take the time to like to really think about the context because we're trying to be too fast. And so in particular when you think about, where we're driving, like how we're engaging with customers, right, is where we need to take the time to do that right.
I
Rebecca,
agree.
how do you think about that at scale though? So, right, like, I mean, think about the organization that has thousands of smaller customers where we really can't involve like that human intervention, we'll refer to it as. Like, what's your level of comfort of just letting some of these things run?
But um ideally you still have small segment, right? You definitely can't hit it on a one-to-one. You have to hit it on a one-to-many. But it's an awareness of, like, let's say there's a product that a product line that you haven't been updating as frequently or has had more support struggles, or you have to be aware, right? Instead of just, so your messaging, even though it's to a set of customers, has to be different than the way that you may be approaching others. And to me, that's what matters. It's when I talk about the how, right? Instead of going, hey, we have another cool announcement, or here's your latest, release notes about something. If there's something you have to tackle that hasn't been good or hasn't been great, make sure you're not just making everything sound, peppy and enthusiastic. To me, it's, and that still can apply across a set of customers and not in an individual way. It's being mindful for that subset on what you're saying and how.
Somer.
So I have more like opinion on this particular space than delivery, because we are really high touch with all of our customers by the nature like of our product. And so from like a personal experience standpoint of hands-on keyboard work, the way I leverage AI is different to how I would if I was building something, right? I would automate a lot more. But in my actual day-to-day, it's about how much time can I free up to have a conversation with my solution owner to help equip them with the skill of change management and coach them through a conversation they might be having in an executive office. That is a high leverage conversation that's very, very personal because I know their procurement leader and whatever it happens to be, so I can enable them versus us spending time talking about some other stuff or me spending time researching. So like that's how I apply it in my real world life, but that's not like AI driven automation. So I don't have as much value to add here that's not like theory crafting, which I don't necessarily want to go down because that's a road of infinite possibilities.
If I could add just a brief note
You
on
can
that.
always.
Yeah, one of the things I've recommended to myself and a lot of clients that I work with is go through the journey yourself of using the AI stuff that you're feeding your customers. And it's just not common enough that we do that. So I try to encourage all of my clients to like every quarter, if not every 6 months, go through the customer journey by segment, pretend you're a customer. And, so many of us are in this position where we're like, I don't understand why no one's trusting the AI bot that's supposed to be doing all this stuff. And it's like, well, do you trust AI bots when you use them? I mean, you can quickly realize it actually unlocks a lot of scale and a lot of internal empathy with your team if you actually treat these AI tools that you feed your customers almost like they're their own product launches, right? Like as if it was like a new product launch that your team was launching. So then you start to see like, oh yeah, I guess I don't really read release notes. So why would I assume my customers would? Some of my clients are like working with customers who are like realtors or home builders. And like a lot of times they're just in their truck or they're in their, they're on the road. They're not like taking the time to like read release notes. So that's been a helpful tip.
I think too, when we think of leveraging AI and not just in CS, like where my brain goes is a little more a support on this side, but it's still relevant, right? When we want to make customers be able to, instead of logging a ticket, they're coming and they're, leveraging this whole setup. It's all our release notes and all our support information, right? The importance of taking the lessons we've learned from LLMs that want to please everybody. They want to give you an answer. To be able to train it to say, I don't know, right? Which they don't naturally do. Like they naturally want to make up an answer, but we have to create rule sets for the AI that we're presenting to our customers so it doesn't do that. So it gets to a point where it goes, I've looked at all the release notes, I've looked at all the support, like I've looked at all this history. I don't know. Would you like me to log a support ticket for you? Instead of inventing something. And that's part of the journey, right? That we're finding out with with AI and LLMs. And the same actually applies to some of these agents we were talking about internally, right? Rob, is like where you say, stop, don't, this is what we know. Don't advise past this because we don't know.
And it's great context. All right. So we kind of talked about these motions, but we also know that these things are only as good as the data that supports them in the context. So when you guys are thinking about the signals or the different data points that AI can analyze today, or what you wish it would, to tailor these engagements or approaches more effectively, what are some of the things that you think are critical data points or signals for these tools?
For me to go back to that 7 points in the customer journey that I mentioned, like I would encourage everyone here to ask yourself, am I getting notified of a stalled onboarding? Am I getting notified of usage drops? And am I making the most out of that information where I can even automatically trigger messaging to the user, ideally in real time, to resolve that? Am I surfacing customer feedback and customer sentiment automatically and in a scalable way? And then even rounding out the customer journey, like, am I automatically learning about the customers, not just the customers like upcoming renewal, but the risks around that, the context around that, the goal achievement around that, the value outcomes that customer received, all the way through to like expansion and advocacy. So like if you go through those different points in the journey, and I'll be happy to throw them back in the chat, like usually most teams have some room for more real-time visibility and maybe agentic action at one of those points. So those are the main buckets of data that I think through.
I like your point, Rob. And I think when we think about things like usage, support tickets, that type of thing, unfortunately, that's looking in the rear view, right? By the time that the usage is dropping, it might be later. So I think that's important. That's important that we leverage the technology to update those CSMs, right? So they say, oh, this has dropped and they're notifying them. So the CSM isn't going and looking that they're receiving the alert. Where I think AI starts to make the difference is across the patterns, across all the data sets and all the customers that says, hey, this set of customers tends to be trending lower in sentiment. And it seems to be related to the implementation or the delays like in this area. And that's where you can use, again, across that data set to be able to say, what do I need to think about and understand for this set of customers before it happens to others? How do I identify potential risk as a trend? That's where, to me, it's made more of a difference to being able to predict because of the data.
And to add an individual contributor's lens on, I'm managing a book of business, and some of the things I need to look at are based around my customers and what's happening in their world, what's happening in their industry, what's happening to their business. And so, like a really simple one that everyone can do is like set up every like individual contributor, set up Google Alerts to run once per week for all the customers in your book of business and to give it to you in one bulk email. And then you can drop that into an LLM with a predefined prompt to be able to then extract out of it specific insights that you can then deliver into your customer quickly. And so maybe they're going through an acquisition where they are acquiring a company. So for me, that's new seats. So I want to be on board. Ideally, my customer tells me as soon as they know, but this gives me targeted outreach that I can go and help grow the account, or the inverse, they're being acquired. So then I can go and start taking action. So for me, it's about data, which is just, there's no context. So I try to use AI wherever I can to apply context to turn it into insight and then shorten the window between insight and action, right? Because everything is about the speed to relevant action for me, because I have a finite period of time to go and apply, whilst my Robs and my Rebeccas are thinking about the system as a whole to improve my ability to perform and execute within it.
I think the challenge, a lot of what we're talking about today, it's this combination of digital to scale across hundreds and hundreds, or the CSM who has 10 strategic customers. They're very different solves, but at the same time, we can still do things faster. We're able to be more strategic advisors because we aren't parsing through the data. Somer, I want to share an example that you made me think of that a strategic account manager at my company used. Imagine saying, we are wanting to upsell within a particular software space, and saying, which of this customer has posted on LinkedIn about this type of industry challenge, right? Has anybody been talking about struggles they've had in this particular business area that our solution solves? And to be able to look at across all of those users and stakeholders, at a particular customer and give that feedback is really insightful. And maybe it sounds dodgy if we're using that to potentially sell more, but what we're doing is they're publicly sharing, like, here's a struggle that my business is facing, or here's something that I'm, interested to learn more about. And it really lets us, get closer to what their problems are, and being more mindful and leveraging the data that's out there in a way that we never could have before.
All right, guys. Well, now we're going to talk about this balance. So I think this is actually a great segue point to our next question here. So as we think about this, right, how do we want to balance automated outreach with manual high touch interactions? Because I think that there's still value in both, even in a digital scaled environment. So what do you guys think about when you're thinking about this balance between automated and what should still require manual or high touch interactions? What does that look like? Somer, why don't you get us started, since you are the high touch guy on this call?
It's kind of interesting, hey, where so my company has had customer success as a function for like just a little bit longer than I've been a CSM. So we are like in it, and it's creating everything as it goes. And so some of our practices are not as sophisticated or even data driven necessarily. And a lot of the time it's just, what's the goal that we're trying to achieve? How do we get them to achieve that goal? And it's not always like scaled or even scalable. But I just think about one example, which is where I'm a customer and I'm trying to figure out, what do I have to go do in my platform in order to achieve the goal of whatever it is. It might be an administration task. And Rob brought up like an in-app sort of contextually dependent walkthrough that can help. And so that's a place that we're really looking at within our product, which is more contextual based support to deflect, say, support tickets, which deflects the amount of inbound inquiries that I might receive. I would automate 1,000% of that to free up strategic conversations where I can look someone in the eye and ask them a really hard question and allow the silence to sit there and allow that conversation to happen so they can truly share how they're feeling. That to me is the difference, is freeing up like my mental bandwidth as well to be able to sit and perform on a call, which is like something we don't talk about as much as mental budget and overwhelm. And I find that those two things are really imperative because AI can't like look you in the eye and have that hard conversation.
Somer, I want to, if I can jump in, I want to add to that. There was a really cool thing that I workshopped with a CSM last week. This customer was threatening to churn, threatening to write bad reviews online. They were super mad. None of us have ever seen that before. And so we came up with a really interesting talk track, which was a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 100% you're going to renew, 0 being you're 100% going to leave us. Where are you on that scale? And we role played that the customer says 3. Like 3, I'm super ready to leave. And then the follow-on question is, just curious, why didn't you choose 2? And then what comes out of the customer is, well, you guys are the future, and you've got the integration that my last system didn't support. And I was like, that was a really cool interaction. And if you look at the beauty of good discovery, you immediately see, like, and a lot of us in customer success, we don't have CSMs ourselves. Like, a lot of us aren't. The funny irony about customer success and like being a CSM is that like a lot of times you've never had a CSM yourself. So maybe you've never had that like great discovery performed on you. Hopefully some of you have had that in therapy or something, but but like the cool thing is like when you see discovery done super well, you're like, wow, this is night and day from the generic AI type questions. So when I think about this problem overall, like I look at, I saw a question in the chat around like strictly digital motions. So usually like the first pass of implementing AI for me is like, yes, you do your segmentation, like enterprise versus long tail, maybe something in between, and you develop like a service model per segment. So there's definitely a segmentation solve, but then you also find ways to supplement your enterprise segment with digital motions. Like digital motions shouldn't just be for that long tail. Digital motions should also be to enrich and enhance the relationships with your enterprise segment as well.
I forgot the question. I just want to keep.
No. I was going to say something, but then Rebecca, I saw you come off mute.
That's okay. Go ahead, Kristi. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the ways that I think about this is like moments of intervention. Like what is being signaled to me? I think we talk a lot about like AI use, the external use of it to how AI interacts with our customers. I'm just going to flip it around and say like I think about the AI personalization use cases internally that signal to me moments to intervene. And that doesn't mean bad intervention. It could be something great happened. My customer did something in our solution or had some outcome, or guess what? I was signaled from some external data that we brought in. Like there was, again, I think we talked about acquisition, or like people do charity work, right? Like just anything that could feed me something that would be an appropriate moment to intervene to build and strengthen the relationship that we have with our customers. So that's how I think about it. It's like serving a moment of intervention that will bring value. And it could be, like I said, a milestone, an activity, an occasion, or whatever the case may be. I'd like to pull in all of my customers' like LinkedIn profiles and see like if there is a job change and stuff like that, and be able to signal and be like, oh, congratulations, or I see you're hiring, right? Like those are great moments to show that you're paying attention. And I think those resonate and I think help build that trust and credibility and that relationship, which ultimately builds trust.
I think I was looking as well through some of the questions, and one was asking about on an exec level, right? How we connect our execs, and our CSMs leverage some of that same type of info, Kristi, right? When we're summarizing, and even if we're, ghostwriting to support that the leadership, connect and saying this is the person. But it's when there's a change or useful information, right? Not just we're sharing something about our release, but we heard that, they did an acquisition or whatever those things are. And then we make it relevant to like how we're able to help them. I paused because there were a lot of things I was thinking of as Somer and Rob were sharing. And the one for me, you mentioned, Kristi, internally, it's not sexy at all, but using AI to improve our efficiency on some of the more complicated renewals and how we look in, and comparing last year, right? What we've, as we're, working on something, a complex pricing sort of thing, we're able to do a lot more with the technology now than we ever did. And that's, and again, that drives us to be able to have the more strategic conversations instead of spending the time in the way that we used to. Was another example that came to mind.
If anyone's ever supported like a publicly traded company and actually manually read through a 10K report, or the transcript from an earnings call, AI is a gift. I used to literally sit there with a highlighter and read these 10K reports and try to distill them down into things that could be woven into my action plan for the customer, or building relationships, or thinking about my growth strategy. And like, now I have a prompt that I've created and I have a GPT to process those types of things with specific objectives for those learnings and those reports. So if you're supporting true enterprise where there is so much data and information available, I mean, think about it, like a publicly traded company's board of directors, if you just even entered in all of their names, the amount of information that would come back, it's crazy. And so I've been using, like, I like the use cases for large enterprises because of all of the context that I remember very empathetically for myself having to do very manually. So.
Well, and even then, when we talk about using AI as a thought partner, and Rob was saying, like challenging so that you're practicing those conversations, you can even send, right, again, depending on the security, but the idea of like sending your board deck or your QBR deck, or saying like, here's the persona I'm used to working with. What questions are they going to ask? Help poke holes into this presentation. And in particular, if you have recordings of past sessions, then you can even say, what will this stakeholder ask me? And so that you're preparing in advance. I know, again, these are, the strategic examples, not the volume. But again, the way that it prepares you then, and you look more, you're much more, strategic and prepared for the objections.
All right. So now we've talked about all the benefits, but we obviously know that there's probably some ways that this could go terribly wrong. And let's talk about those for a minute, because this is going to be the fun part of the conversation. So what are some of the most common pitfalls that CS orgs are going to face or facing when they think about scaling personalization with AI?
Where do you start?
Well, they get my name wrong. I'm just kidding.
The most common one I see is just copy pasting and sending, right? It can be a meeting summary. It can be like an AI, it's some email, and it's not just the name. It's just, the way it's sent, written, without any thought to make sure that it actually is relevant to I mean, that sounds obvious, but that you asked for the most common one, and that's the one I see most.
I'm just going to jump in here and offer one before Rob and Somer jump in and steal all the great ideas. Governance. I just feel like, listen, customer success in a lot of companies, not all, lacks governance in general. And then you layer in AI, which like 10x's our ability to get things really wrong for customers. And without governance over that, it's just going to amplify it. And so I think that if you don't have a program designed very intentionally around even the work that your team would do manually, amplifying that with AI is going to send things off the trail really fast. So that's my thought there, is governance is probably a good place to start in terms of where it's going to go wrong.
Plus one for that.
Go ahead, Somer.
Well, I was just going to say all right. I was just going to agree with you, Kristi, and from the bottom up looking at it, there's also, which I can touch on in a minute so that you can riff off Kristi, Rob, there's like a cost of change for every behavioral change. Like anyone who goes to the gym, for instance, or runs is a great example. And let's say you run every day and you're good. And I come and say, hey, like if you implement this new technique, toe running, okay, and you run every day toe running, you're going to be able to run faster. That's the potential. And so you start running toe running, and you can only run for 3 days because your calves are completely cooked because there's a cost of change. And so what often happens is that it's not factored in from an enablement lens or from a sort of just thinking about like the mental budget from a workflow perspective, that every change incurs cost. And so there's a lot of ideas that happen, and then it's not always rolled out. There might be 7 ideas at once. And so as an IC, you might see your performance dip because you're learning a new talk track or you're learning a new workflow and your muscle memory is not clicking as well. So you should get a performance dip, right? And so sometimes when I'm consulting leaders who are looking at implementing AI into their go-to-market amongst like AEs and CSMs and stuff, we're thinking about like what's their mental capacity for this quarter and what's the upside of this AI change. Like if they get a 20% performance dip, is there a 30% gain so that we're net 10? Or is it like equal? Like how are we actually thinking about changing across the whole cohort? And so that's something I think is missed, given that when I ask the question, most of them say, oh, I've never thought about that. But there is like a cost. Sorry, Rob, go for it, bro.
No, that was great. That was great. It made me think about with a lot of AI implementations, I don't think a lot of teams are taking enough time to define what success looks like with that implementation. I also think, Kristi, what you said is true. There's not a lot of folks who have stopped to define their internal charter around what, when, and how to use AI and what tools to use. So you have a lot of like CSMs having like secret affairs with different tools of choice. And it's like, okay, at what point do we just pause to say we should maybe have a degree of governance around this? So I think those are two pitfalls that jump to mind that I consistently see. The other ones that jump to mind are hallucination and AI doing math, like large language models doing math. So on the hallucination front, I've had like a lot of really frustrating experiences where like I said, like I probably spent way too much time studying like behavioral science, but a lot of times like, these different tools are just making up studies and it's so upsetting to me. I'm like, have some respect for the game. So the hallucination is seriously problematic at times. And, it sometimes calls me Lauren for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I don't know where it's getting some of this information from. But
because you talked about moving to Claude. So they're like, no, forget right? You, Lauren.
Yeah. It's not supposed to know that's my secret name. No, but anyway, the other thing is like, this is a big concern for me lately is math. And when I say math, I'm specifically referring to forecasting. I have found that large language models are not the right fit in their current state to be doing forecasting. I worked for a period of time last year on a project to basically make a prediction market out of large language models. But what we consistently found, we found a number of barriers. One of them was that just like the AI doing the math was really not that effective. And
because it doesn't do math.
Yeah.
Or it hasn't to date done math, right? It'll search the web for the things to piece it together, but it's got to be in there, but it's not doing math.
And I think part of the problem was just like using a large, just look at the term large language model. I'm not an expert, but I do come to realize that like this unit of truth, the fundamental unit of truth for an LLM is language, and it's not necessarily, that's not always, quantitative. So I'm still exploring different tools. This is also another reason why I think Claude has probably better functionality in this regard. But yeah, I don't know. I keep resorting back to spreadsheets.
For me, one final risk I want to call out is the risk of not leaning in and being afraid of AI and not doing anything with it at all, right? Because we're scared or because we know there's hallucinations or maybe something didn't go well or you weren't as successful or it took longer. And if you're at an organization like mine where we are all leaning in, like every SLT member the third quarter of last year, we all had initiatives around it. And we're like, we're going to move fast and we're going to fail some on our way, but we are leaning in because it will make the difference in the long term. If you aren't at a company like that, it can be really scary because you're saying, I want to try, I've heard about this. There are experts in the area who are talking about it, but I don't know. And it might take me longer. And then there's some element that you don't trust. And, I've read, some of these books around like in the MIT study that says 95% of AI projects fail, right? But that's because they weren't thought out. People give up early, right? And so if I can say anything to this audience, it's try and try again, and you won't always get it right. So double check, like keep stay in the loop. Don't just send and automate things right away, right? Like get feedback, give feedback to, to improve, but don't give up. Like the differentiator for you as someone in customer success, especially going forward, is how do you leverage these tools? Not how you avoid them.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's
And
a great place to, oh, sorry, Summer, go.
I was just gonna say, like, we're all most probably all employees here. Kristi, Rob, no, don't know about the audience percentage. Like, think about your hireability if you couldn't use a keyboard, right? Or, you know, now with Uber, if you can't drive a car, like this is happening. It's already in. It's like there's a cost to not changing. And as time changes, like the variables of the decision change over time. So the longer we spend planning, if you like books, there's a book called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, who's like a Navy SEAL. There's a clip on YouTube of him talking about like the continuum of planning to action, and that the longer you plan for, like your enemy's maneuvering. And so in the field of business, the longer it is that we plan, by the time that we spend 30 days out of our 35 days planning, like the environment's changed. You don't have time to iterate. And so to riff off you, Rebecca, like do what you can and just like fail repetitively really fast. Otherwise, there's a significant cost to us all for not participating.
I love that. All right, guys, listen, while we do have a bunch more questions that we could potentially go through, I'm actually going to go over to the questions that our audience has asked. So just a reminder for everyone, we do go quarter past. No, not a quarter past. We go 15 minutes into the hour. So anyway, we're going to spend a couple minutes going through your questions. So if you've asked a question, stick around. We'll likely get to it if it was upvoted. If you haven't asked a question you want to, please go over to the Q&A, drop your question there. We are going to sort it by most upvotes. So take a minute, scan the questions there, upvote the ones that you love. For my panelists, take a sip of something. Get ready. We've got some good ones here. All right, so we're gonna get started. Dawn asked, I would love to know exactly which tools CSMs are using for AI. Is it the standard ones like ChatGPT, Claude, and how are they using it besides just refining emails and crafting messages? I think we rattled off a couple. So why don't we just do kind of like a fast, rapid fire top 3 AI tools that you love for CS, and no one's allowed to repeat one. Rob.
Can I repeat what I said before, though?
You can say you can repeat what you've already said, but nobody else on this panel can repeat one that's already been said. So we are going to walk away with 9 unique tools, right? 3 times 3. I'm like ChatGPT. I can't do math. Go.
Yeah. So for me, Spiky for sentiment analysis on calls, also transcription too, but specifically sentiment analysis, which can then feed health scoring. Quarter Zip is the most advanced AI I've seen for onboarding. So far, brand new tool, but it allows like context-based guidance, user guidance for users who are onboarding. And then the third, I don't know if I think I mentioned this in the chat, but Wavelength, it was called Assembly, but I think there were too many companies called Assembly. They just recently rebranded. I've like been super impressed with some of the stuff that Wavelength can do, like, knowing when stakeholders change. That's pretty important information when you're going into most of your critical customer interactions, or even just like if you're, sending emails to somebody who actually left their job 10 months ago and you didn't realize. Those are the 3 that come to mind.
All right, Summer, 3.
All right. Okay, I'm going to throw one like it's not an AI tool, but it's an AI function within a tool. So it's going to be in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. It can build like an account profile for you. And I find that to be extremely helpful at synthesizing information around like initiatives, but most importantly, like problems that they're having, and then looking at changes in headcount so that I can adjust how I approach a customer. So that's very helpful. Anything that's a conversational or meeting intelligence tool, I use HighSpot. I used to use Gong, whatever it is. And there's like a million use cases I have within HighSpot. And then the last one, I'm just going to take like a custom Gem, ChatGPT, whatever, a custom like Copilot sidekick that understands all of your context so that you can quiz it and put information in there and accelerate how quickly you can get to that point of action when you have some kind of stumbling block or hurdle that you've come across. They're my 3.
I am most experienced with ChatGPT, where we've built agents So I ask me next time about Claude because that's what I need to go play with. But for today, my answer is ChatGPT. And again, Summer, to the point that you're saying, you can put individual. I mean, I built a wine agent where I can take a picture. I know this is a CM, but like where I take a picture and it tells me exactly what I've told it to tell me about, like the grape and where it comes from. Like you can make it do all the things, right? Yeah. Number 2, gamma. Haha, we didn't say that yet. And the part of this 9. And number 3, for me, it's glyphic. That, my team uses a lot of, and we did transition to glyphic instead of Gong, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, very good. We're going to go on to our next question. All right, again, doing it by upvotes, guys. How are companies leveraging AI to build executive relationships between C-suites?
Some of that we've hit, right? When you think about like really understanding, like how can you use intelligence and insights to share, to present information, to bring it back to your CSMs or to your leadership, right, about changes in the customer. I think that's the main thing for us. It also helps with just some of the summarizing. That sounds so simple, right? But when I think about the CSMs, just hosted a QBR, and we're recording that and capturing, and what we're able to send as a summary to the leadership to explain what just happened in some of those strategic customer meetings, and then setting up the execs for follow up. I mean, it sounds obvious at this point, but that's what we primarily do.
I had used AI for that specifically. So last role I was in, I was CCO over at Client Success. So I was using it to actually drive, again, when I talked about like the intervention, these moments where I was actually, of all the milestones across the customer lifecycle, there were certain that I wanted to intervene, where I was reaching out to the customer specifically when certain things happened, as opposed to the CSM who might be responsible for the day-to-day. And so I very much mapped those things out with our CSMs and said, I'm going to take this one, and this one. And then that way it was actually a facilitator of stronger relationships because I was the one engaging and had context and an appropriate moment in time where there was a relevant outreach, as opposed to an executive doing a blind outreach saying, hey, I just want to check in and say hi and see how things are going. Like nobody cares. So an exec checking in is the same thing as a CSM checking in. It's useless. It's a waste of time and most people won't engage. So for me, it was like finding appropriate triggers. And I always found that was really helpful. And then using AI to synthesize everything that had happened and transpired around that moment in time to drive that trigger. So I was also reaching out contextually. It wasn't like, hey, I'm reaching out because you did X. It wasn't just the activity, but it was all of the things that were happening around it too. So if they had certain support tickets open or feature requests open, or, CSM sentiment had some volatility, or product usage and stuff had movement, all of the contextual signals around it were being fed to me, so that way I could use it in that conversation and also use those signals to draft the email. So it felt really relevant to the person I was connecting with.
I really like that. I feel like for me, Kristi, it actually goes back to that panel I was saying that you did with, for anyone who's interested in this guy's research, I think it's really great. His name is Advait Sarkar. I think I'm saying that right.
Yeah, close enough.
I'll throw it in the chat.
Put it in the chat. Yep.
He and Kristi did this like amazing panel last month where it was like how to use AI to challenge you. And I'm not gonna lie, like, when I was managing accounts, I would often show up to meetings lightly prepared. And I almost like took it as a point of pride, right? Like, oh, I could just show up to a QBR, go win a renewal and like high five my colleague and move on. But like, it wasn't really a point of pride. It was actually me just like sheepishly not really taking the time to prepare in the right ways. So I would like pull up a spreadsheet of customer data and I'm like, do I really have to go through all this? But now it's like I can come into customer interactions not just prepared with the right triggers, the right context, but also thinking 3 steps ahead, like it's a chess match. Like, okay, the customer has this objection based on this value milestone that they were looking to achieve that I pulled from their kickoff script, their kickoff call transcript that was 9 months ago. And I'm going to prepare, I'm going to rehearse now, and I can just even do it just walking around the block. So someone with ADHD like me really benefits from that kind of thing. I can rehearse that call. So like I said before, the first time I have that conversation with the customer is not really the first time I've had that conversation. But it all depends on like making sure that you're prompting your AI to challenge you in ways that might be a bit uncomfortable, and then also carving out that time in advance.
All right, very good. We're going to move on to the next question. We'll see if we can get to like one or two more here. So this one's from Michael for all of the panelists. What are your top three concerns or fears with using AI in your roles?
I mean, eventually, I don't really have, Kristi, we spoke about this on our first call together ever. It was like, I don't have that much fear about it, to be entirely honest, because it's going to take over most of everything. And then there'll be some stuff it won't take over. I'm just going to try and ride the wave. Like, it's disrupting everything. And that's a fact. And so then fear makes us think in binary and like restrict our behavior. And so I'm actually working really hard, Michael, to not like work out of a place of fear wherever possible and work out of a place of opportunity, which takes like a bit of mental work and like, maybe 20 minutes of free writing in my journal. Um, but it's like accepting an inevitability that things are going to change so that I can sort of iterate from a place of creativity and excitement.
I love that. I think it's such
I'm
a good
terrified,
headspace
Summer.
to be in. All right, I'm going to do my fear, but like from the context of being in my former role, so running our post initial sales org, my fear, because I'm thinking about AI from that a senior leadership level, my fear was my team not being motivated to learn it. So for me, it's like that adoption of AI. Like I wanted that ingrained in the DNA of how we were thinking about solving, and I wanted people who just like wanted to test and try and all that. But like you can't force people to do these things, right? Like spend all your free time. And I had half my team who was like building crazy things on the weekend, and like other members of my team who could literally care less. So my big fear was like, how do you inspire and motivate people to want to creatively lean in, not be afraid of it, and figure out ways to solve problems.
I was going to hop on that. To me, it's really leveraging the early adopters right, because people are fearful. But it can't just come from me as a leader on, yay AI. We have a great CSM. Shout out to Joe Kern, who leaned in right when we were starting to adopt Glyphic. And so when he was like, here's how I'm using, like, in asking questions, and then he helped build out some of the workflows because he's a CSM who's using it every day and saying, here's what would be more helpful for me. And then we leverage him to help enable some of the other CSMs. So they're seeing it, from Joe, not from Joe, who knows our customers and our solutions and, and our challenges. And that to me was a big, it's a win for him because he obviously was curious and interested, but then more relatable for the rest of the team. Yeah, for me, my fear is, like I said, people not being mindful of what should be private, right? Again, there's a whole privacy thing we need to be aware of. You can't just send out your information into, when we think about, what LLMs using customer sensitive data. But beyond that, like if we can allow that, we are in a secure place where we're allowed to share this data. To me, it's how do we learn fast enough? How do we, how do we choose and prioritize, probably, right, among all the different directions in technology, how we're going in the right way. But again, some of that's just not being afraid of failing.
Can I put on my pessimist hat for a second?
Let's go.
Please.
What do you got?
I am terrified. And I think a lot of you guys should be too. Look, I've spent this whole last hour or whatever, like talking about really cool tools and interesting ways to use AI. But I think if you look at like a macroeconomic standpoint, um, so 10, 11 years ago at the first startup I was at, the founding engineers were they were Stanford AI people, and they were front row center to all the capabilities of AI like 10, 11 years ago. And now they're like, so actually two of them have spun up a nonprofit called Civ AI, which is basically meant to prevent AI from taking over the world and turning us into gorillas. Where like we're the the primate subserves of our AI overlords. I'm bastardizing a bit how they would describe their initiative and their mission, but like I don't know. I've been terrified in a way that um, there could be in the near term significant job loss. There really could be, and I don't want to scare anybody here, but like this should be a motivation to stay on the bleeding edge of all the tools that are coming out there. Um, there could be near term job loss. There could be significant near term changes to how the economics of customer success shake out. So, like for example, when we're all using AI, that's not free. It actually has a cost. Like every time you use AI, there's tokens being used, and there's significant hardware pressure, and someone's paying for that. And so I think it changes the economics of the CS role, where we have to think about the margins of our initiatives and the tooling that we're using in a way that a lot of us haven't before. And yeah, and that'll, if we stay on top of those trends, hopefully we won't become gorilla subserves to our AI overlords. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I do think actually there is like that one thing that reassures me is that I was talking with a Google engineer last week, and he was like, there's a certain extent to which like there are hardware limitations where AI innovation might actually start to plateau for the near term, just because there's just not enough hardware to support more innovation. Also, like these things do take time. Like the .com era did not take over the world in a year. It took like 20 years. So we have time to adapt. But definitely encourage everyone to stay on the cutting edge as much as possible.
With the caveat that saying, like, use your time strategically. There are so many tools out there that it could easily become a full-time job. Like, it's funny, I'm looking at my notebook right now. I have a list of 72 tools so far, of things that I should go explore. I mean, it's impossible. It would be a full-time job. So think about it strategically and put your time where it makes the most sense, because it can easily just eat all of your time. All right. So that said, speaking of time, we are at time for today. So we have reached the end of our session. I want to thank all of our guests for sharing their valuable insights, experiences. Obviously, guys, your contributions made the discussion today truly meaningful for our community. To our audience, thank you for your active participation. I know there's a bunch of questions that we didn't get to, and they're good. Feel free to reach out directly to our panelists. I'm sure they'll be happy to lean in and give you a point of view on any of these. Share your thoughts about today's session on LinkedIn. Tag Success Coaching, tag Success Hacker. I know they love to hear the takeaways, so please go ahead and share your thoughts there. The next session will be on March 18th. These are now monthly, and they're going to be discussing how to design and operationalize handoffs between sales, onboarding, support, customer success, and so on, so that customers' experiences are single, seamless journeys. Finally, let me leave you with this. Great customer-focused individuals know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to find them, and that's why we've created this series. So go ahead, have a great rest of your month, and hopefully we'll see you back March 18th. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.